Today is March 24th, 2023, and we are here today with Les Simpson, who's running for City Council Place 4. Les, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate that.
Let's start off by telling the voters why you chose to run for City Council.
Yeah. Well, I've called Amarillo home for 20 years. Raised my two daughters, who are now grown, but raised them here. And we really loved Amarillo because it's a faith-based conservative community, and those are things that are important to us. And also in my role, the first 15 years I was here, I was publisher of the Amarillo Globe News. And part of that role was, of course, I ran the business operation. It was a business first. The job was to make a profit. That's what businesses do. But also in that role, I was, our role was to be a watchdog for the government. It was to be able to go to meetings. It was to be able to report on government, report back to the community what was going on. And most importantly, our job was to hold elected officials accountable. That was kind of what the Fourth Estate was supposed to do. Well, a lot of that has changed, and since then I've left that role, and now I own my own business. I started a business called The Entrepreneur Source, and I spent the last 5 years working not only with local people, but people across the country to help them start their own small businesses. So my first 15 years, it was involved in learning a lot more about government, reporting it, getting a good understanding of that, holding them accountable. And then the last 5 years, I've just got an incredible education on small business, which is the backbone of the economy, not only locally, but across the country, and the reasons why they're so important and the challenges that they face. So in these two roles, I've been doing my homework on local government for 20 years. And I think if you ask anyone who's running for any office, but particularly Amarillo City Council, the most important thing you can do is do your homework and really have a good understanding of that, because you only have 2 years. You don't have time for a steep learning curve. And so for me, that knowledge base that I've accumulated over the last 20 years is something that I think makes me qualified to serve on there, and to have a knowledge base to really be able to understand how our government is set up to work, what it's supposed to do, what it's not supposed to do, so that we can be more effective in serving the citizens of our community.
So why did you choose Place 4?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think by the time I had announced, I had looked at, I think there were people that were qualified for every seat. And so I just said the ones I chose Place 4. And I don't think there was anything that was, that I thought about that. I looked at some other positions because Gunny Brown had run before. I think Tom Schlerin had run before. I think Don Tips had already announced by that point. Cole had not announced his intentions when I ran. So when I kind of looked at the landscape, I just decided to go with Place 4.
So what do you see the role of the City Council?
Yeah. You know what's interesting is, and sometimes I think, the community may lose sight of this, or really doesn't have a understanding sometimes of how the charter sets up our government. Because if you go back and look at the charter, and that's the equivalent to our Constitution, which was created, there are several key things that are in that charter about how we're to operate the government. I had Judge Doug Woodburn is in my Sunday school class at church, and a couple of weeks ago he was talking about his career and what he did and about his family. And his great-grandfather was helped write the charter for the city of Amarillo. And what he explained was, at that time, it was based on what's called the Cincinnati Plan. And I guess when the city of Cincinnati was founded, they came up with a different way to kind of run their government. And the way that it was set up and the way that it was adapted in our charter was to have a weak mayor and a weak council form of government. In other words, it's not the mayor and the council that are running the day-to-day of the operations. In fact, the mayor and council have very limited powers, according to our city charter. And the things that are in the city charter, the responsibilities that are given to the mayor and council, there's really four key things. One is the city council appoints the municipal judges. Number two, they approve salaries. I don't even think in the budget in the charter it says we approve the budget, but you approve the salaries of the employees. Number three, you pass ordinances, the laws that govern the city. And number 4, and this is the most important by far, you select the right person to be the city manager. And it is a responsibility of the city council and the mayor to find the right person that runs the day-to-day operations of the city. So you have to make sure that you have the right person there. The mayor and council then give direction to the city manager on where do we want to go? Where's our community telling us we want to go? And then it's up to the city manager to make those things happen. And ultimately, the final responsibility of the mayor and council is to hold that city manager accountable to make sure that that person is doing what he or she has been instructed to do, which is what we were elected to do. So it's really pretty simple, is that the mayor and council are to hire the right person that can do the job, that can set the culture, that can get things accomplished, and hold that person accountable to do it.
So it kind of functions like a school board.
Kind of like our business board of directors.
Yeah.
You know, when there's a business that has a board of directors, the board of directors are not there every day in the business talking to all the department heads and looking at that. They're looking at it from a higher level, and they're giving direction, you know, to that company of where they think that should go. And then the CEO of the company is the one that's supposed to make that happen. Very similar, you know, type setup. So it's different. As you know, the county governments are a little bit different. You know, the county, whoever's elected to run the county, Nancy Tanner in Potter County, for example, she's a citizen that runs, may or may not have experience and background in running a government, but then that person, with the help of the other county judges, actually are running that. So they elect the person you elect in Potter and Randall County. That person is directly running the day-to-day of the business. But of course, in the city of Amarillo, the mayor and council, it was never intended for any of these to be a full-time job. That's why they pay $10 a meeting. It's really a volunteer job, and it's not supposed to be a full-time job. It's supposed to be guiding and directing and listening to the citizens. And really, the mayor and the council are the last line of defense for the citizens that we represent. We're supposed to be making sure that, you know, that things are happening that are in the best interest. We don't, when you get elected, you don't become part of the government. You don't become part of the school board. It's not your job to say, wow, we've got the greatest school board and we've got the greatest government. It's our job to make sure that we're holding the people, the staff that we hire, accountable to reaching the direction that citizens tell us that they want us to go.
Do you think that the previous councils have adhered to that?
I think you kind of see an ebb and flow on that. And I guess sometimes maybe, you know, if someone has more time on city council to be able to dedicate more time to it, maybe they're doing that. But I think a lot of times, I think what we've seen is that all I know, it was never intended to be that way. It's not, it's really not, listen, if the mayor and council members have to be the ones that come up with all the ideas to make it happen, then we got a problem, because that's supposed to be the city manager. And really, again, it's supposed to be a high level direction of being able to do that and being in touch with the community. So personally, I don't see how many, I'm not going to have the time to dedicate hours and hours and hours to it, nor is that what's expected in the city charter. It's supposed to be an oversight board of directors and making sure that you're hiring the city manager, and that person is the one that's supposed to be accomplishing the goals that the council and mayor set forth for the city.
Well, we have a lot of people running for city council this year and mayor, and I think that's great. I mean, it's the more participation, the better. Why do you think that is?
Why are a lot of people running? You know, that kind of seems to happen from time to time. You know, they're back in, I remember Paul Harpo ran one time. There were 9 people running for mayor. But obviously there are people transitioning off of city council right now. And I think it's good that there are a lot of people that are interested in it. And I applaud every single person that is running for every office, because it's kind of interesting. When I was in my previous role, you know, we covered politics. I talked to a lot of people, and I said, listen, politics, you know, it is what it is. Things can happen. But the day after the election, things go back to normal, and don't take it personally. I said, you know, in Texas, politics can be a blood sport sometime, you know. And now that I'm running, I said, I think to myself, It's a little bit different when it's your own blood that you're smelling.
That's right.
So, but I would tell you, it is. It's invigorating. It's a roller coaster. It's your family, goes through a lot of things, and so I think it is great that we have so many people that are running, and we've got great qualified people that I think are, especially coming from different backgrounds, independent thinkers. That I think, we've got older people like me, we've got younger people running, and everything in between, and so I think it's a really good thing, and I think it just shows that there are people. I think every person running is really running for the right reasons, that they love this community like I do. They love the values and the traditions that we stand for, and they want to continue and be part of helping it make it better.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see. There will be no losers.
Correct.
The problem is, will there be a couple of runoffs? That's
yeah. And I tell you, I think, boy, it makes everything better when you have people that you're running against. If it's just, if you're just running against one person or people run unopposed, it really makes you a better candidate. I think it makes you a better leader when you're talking, when you're thinking, when you're communicating. And so I think it's really good. We all have to work really hard at it. Listen, if you're not going to work hard in a campaign, how are you going to work hard for the citizens of Amarillo?
Yep.
And I have spent a lot of time. To me, the best thing that I enjoy the most, and you have to do it, is going door to door and talking to people.
Yep.
And people don't have time to necessarily come down to City Hall all the time. I think it's imperative that we go to them. And I've knocked on a lot of doors, and will continue to do that through Election Day, because I think that's really where you get a sense of the people. And it's also a way that you rebuild trust. If you care enough about them to, when it's a little windy, it's a little hot, it's a little cold, but you're out there knocking on the doors because you want to introduce yourselves to them. You want to, let them know that you're running, and you want to answer any questions, and you want to hear what they have to say. And that's really what I've been focused on doing is not just running and say vote for me, but working hard in the campaign to earn the respect of the voters that they know I will work hard for them if I'm elected to serve on city council.
Yeah, it's the voters that have the solutions.
They do, and we need more of them.
So we just need to pull them in and get them to participate.
Right.
So what are the few main issues that you would like to address once you get elected that you think the voters are asking for?
Yeah. For me, there's three primary things that I hear and see. The first one is, we have got to say yes to business and development in this community. The best way to grow a tax base is through growth. It's not through raising taxes.
Right.
But what's happened in this community, it has become harder and harder for people to do business, for people to look at developing our community and growing on our community. And that's really going to hurt us in the future if we don't change that. What I hear so often is from business people is it's just too hard to do business with the city, whether it's planning or zoning or whether it's licensing or permitting of those type things. It takes entirely too long, to be able to get through this journey, and you can see it. Where is the growth occurring right now in Amarillo?
Outside
well, it's not.
City
It's
limits.
You're exactly right. It's outside of the city limits, and that's great for Randall County, or Potter County if it's occurring there. But these are people that are living right adjacent to it. They're using our services. They're using our parks. They're using our roads. Not all of our services, not the water, but they're on our roads. They're on that, but they're not contributing to any of that. Now that's their choice to be able to do that. But if we don't do something to correct that, we're really going to have a problem funding those basic elemental services. And you have no further to look than Canyon Independent School District is building new schools. They just have a new high school, a new middle school, whereas AISD is having to look at closing down elementary schools. There's a really dramatic shift that's going on right now. Yep. And part of that, I think, not all of it, but part of it is due to regulations, overreach, and making it too hard. Instead of government should be partners with business owners, not throwing roadblocks and obstacles up. And so I think that's one area that we need to focus on. The second area that I think, and I hear a lot of this, and you hear this in campaigns generally, but for me, we've got to focus on the fundamentals. There are a very limited number of things that only government is going to do, and only they should do. And you're hearing a lot about this. You're hearing about sanitation. You're hearing about roads. You can just see, and you can see in alleys. You can see those things. To me, what is equally, if not more concerning, is what you can't see. 65% of our water and sewer lines in this city are between 60 and 90 years old. There is still wooden sewer lines underneath some of these neighborhoods. And that's just that's a community-wide problem. That's just not a north, south, east, west problem. If you look at a map of it, that's all over the communities. And it's not only something that is an Amarillo problem statewide. I guess Texas had a real building boom about 60 to 90 years ago in a lot of communities across the state. But nobody kept up with their infrastructure like they should have, including Amarillo. And what you're seeing in the last 5 to 7 years is the number of boil water alerts, the number of sewer breaks is nearly doubled in the last 7 years in this state. And you see even in this community, a lot of times water is out. People are having that decaying system. And if we're going to take on new industry and grow jobs and businesses, we've got to be able to keep up with that. So that infrastructure is something, and it comes up often, but we got to have a laser focused approach to being able to solve that, or we're going to be in a big mess there. Obviously, on focusing on the fundamentals, also the public safety has got to be something that's very important to citizens. It's always at the top of the list. As I was preparing to consider running, and I had not decided that I was going to run, but I wanted to educate myself, so I did the Amarillo Police Department Citizens Police Academy in the fall. I highly recommend it to anyone in this community, because what you will come out of that learning is we have some incredible people that are serving our community in the police department, and also the fire departments and public safety, and even in the communication center. It's just incredible what they do and the reasons for why they do it. But what I was able to do a couple of ride-alongs, and what I determined really quickly is there's no downtime for police officers. I mean, it is call after call after call, and they're constantly going from one thing to another. So we have to look at the staffing, and then we also have to look at the ability to attract and retain police officers, firefighters, those others in the public safety industry. For a variety of reasons, it is much harder to get people to want to be a police officer these days, and who can blame them with what's going on across the country. Whereas you used to have hundreds of people that would want to be in the police academy. Now you may have a few dozen who want to be in it. After going through a background check, that cuts that number in half. And then you may have 20 or 30 go through the academy. Half of them don't make it out to the end, and that's not going to be able to keep up with the demand. So we've got to be coming up with ways to be able to do that. And firefighters as well is something else that we need to be able to concentrate on. I'm surprised to find out there's a lawsuit that's currently between our firefighters and the city that has been going on for 7 or 8 years. And from what I can tell, the city won't even sit down with the firefighters to talk about it. And it has to deal with the fire marshals and the classification they're under. But there's not even any conversation. It's not a good look when your own firefighters are suing the city and there's not any discussions about it. So the public safety is a key part of it. The third area, and you'll hear this a lot, I'm sure, but it's transparency and accountability is crucial to that, because there's not been enough of that. You see some of the things that are done. Some of them are done very quickly. Some of them are done without any public input or opportunity for any public input, and very little communication. And it's hard. It's hard to communicate. Everybody's busy. But to me, the key thing in transparency is you have to ask the tough questions. If you're not asking the tough questions, if you're just taking everything that you see at face value, and again, I go where my background was at. We had to ask the tough questions when we were working on a story without being influenced by the loud voices, and it was key to what we did. You have to listen to both sides of it. So I think part of that transparency lies on the members of the mayor and city council to do their homework and ask the hard questions, to be able to get the real answers as to what's going on, and then communicate those to the public. the little statistic I mentioned to you just a minute ago about having wooden sewer lines and the aging infrastructure. When I tell that out on the campaign trail, most people have no idea that it's like that, because there's just not a. Sometimes when you get in government, it's like you want to just communicate all the great things that are going on. Well, that's good for a business. A business is not going to air its dirty laundry. It's going to say we're great. But that same type of plan does not work with government. You have to share with the citizens what the challenges are so they get a good understanding of it. So and that you're working to solve that problem. And ultimately, the last part is the accountability part. It is, and I mentioned this before with the city manager, it's that the mayor and council need to not only provide that direction, they need to ask the tough questions, but they need to hold the staff accountable for achieving those goals, and that lies with the city manager. So those are the things that I think are important, and the things that I would want to address and be laser focused on as a council member.
Yeah, I've often wondered why the city doesn't use their utilities to guide growth.
Yes,
that's a pretty simple way to do it, and then that benefits everybody, and it takes that burden off the property taxpayers.
Right.
But you have like the North Heights area that a lot of people complain, well, they're not doing anything to benefit that area and everything's going south. But what people don't understand, there's no sewer. Those people are on septic up there.
One developer says, and I will paraphrase him, where the poop flows, the city grows.
Well,
he did not use the poop word, but
that's a good way to put it.
It is. Now, I know that we're putting, one of the things is there's and I met with the city to kind of get background on water supply. They're putting the Northwest Interceptor that is going to allow, because people, you're exactly right, because people think development's not going into the north side of town because they're just being ignored. They don't have the infrastructure to handle it. Right. You couldn't build a new subdivision up there. Now, the city has invested in the Northwest Interceptor that's going to help with that, and also industrial growth in that area. So that's good, but we've got to continue doing that to be able to keep up with it. But the other thing is, I don't care if it's north, south, east, or west. If you don't make it easier to do business and you don't make your community safe, you're not going to have any growth if you don't do those two fundamental things. And that's not a north issue. That's not a south issue, east or west. That's an issue for the entire community. And to me, that's what's most pressing.
Well, and I've had discussions with previous city managers and mayors, but I'm like, if you want to make downtown grow, that's easy. Clean it up and leave if you clean it up and get rid of the undesirables, businesses will come in. Right. If you make it safe and encourage people to clean it up, and there's simple things you can do, but you need to think outside the box. Mm-hmm. I've said, you all charge a business to take trash to the dump. Why don't you pay them? Mm-hmm. You have the cleanest town overnight.
Right.
And it would save you a fortune. Mm-hmm. There's just simple things, if people just think it through, it could be done, and I think could totally transform the whole place. But we just haven't had people with any vision, I guess, and to try something. Mm-hmm. I'd try it in a precinct and see if it works.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with failing forward. I mean, don't sit here and say, let's don't try things. Let's try things. You should fail quickly, so let's don't, if it doesn't work. But kind of interesting. Amarillo is the only community that I've lived in where the municipality is still hauling off residential and trash.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Most other places that I've lived in, now the government has to oversee it,
sure,
and regulate it. But it's done by private companies, and it's often done in a competitive situation. And so, and I think all these things, and it's just been like that way forever, but I think everything that the city does has got to be on the table to look for efficiencies in doing those things. Because, we can't meet all these needs on the back of the taxpayers. We have to look at efficiencies. We have to look at better ways of doing things. And we need to challenge the staff to do that. I mean, if a staff member at the city council is working on their budget and I know more about their budget than they do, then we've got a problem. But one thing I think would be something that and this is an application that I've seen in the business world and that I've used in it. And I'll give you a reason why it would be important to do this. Sales tax is our number one revenue producer, not property tax. A lot of people don't know that, but it's 39% of our income, which is good. That helps keep the property taxes low. A lot of other communities, sales tax is second, so that's good. But sales tax is also very volatile. I mean, you don't know what or when could happen, and we've seen that before. We've been very fortunate that we've had consistent growth. But what would happen, if we're planning for the future, what would happen if something happened to that dramatically quickly and we had to, alter our spending quickly? And in the business world, we used to do something called the 2-4-6-8-10, which is, 2% reduction in expenses. What would that look like, and where would we get that from? 4%, 6%, 8%, 10%, going through that and being able to look at that. Not that we're going to do that, but just like any smart business person would do, the government really needs to be looking at that and using that as a way to say, okay, let's look at where that is. Now let's see what we have to give up for the 2%. And with that, if we're saving on that 2%, that we could go spend on law enforcement, that we could go spend on infrastructure without doing it on the backs of the property tax owners, I think that is one way to address the solution. The other way, I think, in addressing the spending to look at is just like any large business. When I was running a business, our number one expense were people. That's the number one expense.
Yep, labor's the cost.
And one of the things that we did, and I think we did very well, is looking for efficiencies when people leave, to say, hey, if we've got 4 people doing something and one of them leaves, can 3 people do that? Particularly if we give them more money to be able to do that and say, hey, and then also part of that, the rest of that money would come back as savings, profit if you're in business, profit to the owners, or you're reallocating that somewhere else. So you're really doing 2 things there. You're adding savings, or the ability to have savings, and also you're compensating your people more that are still there and rewarding those that are really, working hard for you. So really personnel, and again, I think these are exercises that you must do, whether times are good or whatever, so you have a game plan. But also, I think if we're going to earn the trust back for voters, we've got to do our due diligence on the money that they're already investing with us. And that's what they don't get a choice, but they're investing that money with the city, and they expect a return on investment, just like you do with property or people do in stocks or whatever. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can so the citizens feel that they're getting a good and a good return on that investment, and letting them know how we're doing that, and we're managing that money very efficiently. Because if it does come to the point where, maybe at some point down the road to pay for this infrastructure, we would have to ask the voters for additional money to do that, they're not going to trust us with additional money unless we've earned their trust on what they're giving to us right now. And to me, that would be a first priority of going in with city council, is being able to look at that and re-earn the trust by saying we're making great use of the best use we can, and we've really scrutinized this, and here's what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If the voters know that their employees are doing the best they can, they'll happily give them more money.
Mm-hmm.
But if they see that their employees are sloughing off, they're probably not going to.
Right. It's a trust factor, plain and simple.
Well, why should the voters choose you over your opponents in place 4?
Yeah. A couple of reasons I would say, and I kind of alluded to these a little bit before. Number one, I've done my homework for 20 years. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it work well. I've seen it not work so well. I've watched 4 mayors and maybe a couple of dozen council people come through there. I've seen some great people that have represented our city, and I would emulate them. One of my favorite people is, I don't know if you know him or not, but Jim Sims was, the Sims building is named for him. He was one of the first people I ever met when I moved to Amarillo. And Jim was one of the most principled leaders I've ever seen, and he was going to do what was right for the people. And that's what I would do. So I think the homework part of it is just a knowledge of that is what I bring to the table. The other thing is that my business experience, and what people often don't know is, when they think and I was publisher of the paper for 15 years, they think, well, that he just deals with the news, the content or whatever. Actually, that was very little of my time doing that. Most of my time was running a business. And not only during that time was I over our business operations here, but I was over our business operations in Lubbock. I was over our business operations in Arkansas, Minnesota, and Alaska. So at that time, I was overseeing about $50 to $60 million in revenue and expenses, multi-million-dollar budgets. That type of experience is going to be crucial in going. We're not, we're dealing with some major numbers here, and so I've seen the tricks that people use in budgeting. Maybe I've used a few along the way myself. So, but I had to. That was part of my role in my job, is to look at these large budgets and really be able to dissect them and know the right questions to ask. So that experience, I think, will be very beneficial to serving on council and serving the citizens. And the third and most important is that I'm going to ask the tough questions without being influenced by loud voices. That's the way we had to do it at the newspaper. We had to listen to both sides, but you couldn't be influenced about not doing a story just because someone was going to cancel their advertising with you. It hurt, but you had to run that organization. You could not let other people run it. And it's the same with the city. Last I checked, every person gets one vote. No person's vote counts more than others. Now, you got to listen to a lot of people. You especially need to listen to people that have differing opinions than you do. I think that's part of how we kind of get messed up when we get elected. When you're campaigning, you have to talk to all different types of people. You hear all different types of opinions. When you get elected, you go back into your cocoon of comfort. You don't go back out and talk to those people. And so I think that's something that's very important to do. But asking those tough questions and not being influenced by loud voices, no matter where they come from, and ultimately getting all the information and making the tough decisions. And there were times where putting a story in the paper was a tough decision to make, whether we do that or not. It can have a lot of impact on people. But it was up to me to make that tough decision, and I'm used to making those, and I will do my homework. I'll look at both sides, and I have the ability to make the tough decisions if I were to serve on city council.
So you actually had people threaten to cancel advertising if you ran a story?
Oh, yes. Yes. And listen, we had to be fair. Okay, so if there was a problem with the story and we were not being fair about it, then we shouldn't run it. But tough, I'm not apologizing for. And we asked tough questions, and we had some tough things to do. And there were times where people would say what they were going to do, but if it's a story, it's a story. And where is your ethics and where is your character if you let people influence you that way? And if it's a news story, we would publish it.
Yeah, it's the ones that would threaten that are the ones that don't have the character or the ethics.
Yeah, and sometimes it was just kind of surprising. Sometimes, what would it wasn't like a everyday thing. I mean, right. It wasn't like it came up all the time, but that was part of what you had to make the decisions on doing that. And yeah, it hurts, but ultimately our business was a little bit different. Our business was really like a utility. I mean, our goal was we had to serve the community. That was what we were there for, and so we had to serve our readers in the community. In many ways, we were really the last community gathering place. That the newspaper for many years was where everybody go to get the right, to see, okay, here's something that we can all see what's going on. That whole industry has changed, and now everybody's fragmented where they get their information, and it's just hard to find out exactly what are the facts, because now they're being left open to interpretation. So, but part of that was just serving the community and being in the best interests of the community. And I was fortunate to work for a owner for many years who was a Christian man, conservative values, Billy Morris, who invested in this community, invested in other communities, and but was principled in that way. When I called him up and I said, Mr. Morris, here's what's happening, he says, you do the right thing, and he supported us on that.
That's good. Well, do you have anything else you want to tell the voters?
No, I just want to encourage people to get out. I know that you and other Republicans, but particularly in this area, are doing a lot to increase voter awareness, get people registered, to get them to vote. It's, You know what? I mean, it's sad. We have, I think, 120,000 registered voters. Does that sound
Yeah,
about
that's
right?
about right. And
And
city limits.
if we get 10 to 12 to 13% of those in the upcoming election, that's about average, you know?
Well, hopefully we can double that.
Yeah. And I think that would be great. So I just, you know, I'm going to ask all the people that are helping me to call people. I want them to vote for me, but I want to get people out to vote, because that, you know, we have the opportunity to do that, and to be able to elect the right candidates to you know, serve on city council. And you know, I really would be honored to do that, and I would do my best to put the citizens first and remember that that's who I would be working for every day.
Do you have a website or anything?
Yes. So LesSimpsonforAmarillo.com is my website. It has more about me. Has a picture of my really cute grandson, which I would highly recommend. He's about 18 months old, so that's the best part of the website. And then also I'm on Facebook as well with some more information about me.
Well, very good. And if you want to get registered to vote and you haven't, you can go by our headquarters, 4217 Southwest 21st, and register to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote at your current address. A lot of people forget that. They move and forget to change the registration. So go by there, see Karen, and she'll fix you up. She can register you. It doesn't matter which county you live in, and we'll get you registered to vote. So I appreciate you coming by, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you at various and sundry forums between now and May the 6th, and good luck out there on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate that.
No problem.